With all the recent news and the escalation, even more tariffs today against Russia, the thought of an EMP or more nuclear style war is in the mind of the mainstream and in the minds of the people of America. A lot of countries though in Europe and a lot of countries across the world have got good protocols for EMPs and nuclear fallout, such as shelters, bunkers. America, not so much. So what would we do if all of a sudden the EMP hit and it hit a certain area? Now the thing is, we know that it would take a monster EMP or several EMPs or a major nuclear fallout to take the grid out of everywhere. It could do major destruction across America. So let's talk about 5 things that you should be doing and be prepared to make sure that if something like that happens, you have the game plan needed to figure out what's the best way to shelter yourself, to take refuge, and make sure that you and your family will be safe. If you don't have a bunker, which a lot of people don't, what's some of the best options for us? So let's jump in those today. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so much for being here. You probably hear the animals in the background like that one because it is a beautiful morning here on farm. We have a lot of work to do and they know it is feeding time. So we're gonna jump into this video first and then we'll get to the farm chores. If you're new to the Max, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. We're gonna be giving away thousands of dollars worth of prizes just in a few days once we hit 200,000 subscribers. We're gonna be giving away tons of prepping and survival and homestead options that could help you start this journey of making sure you're taking care of your family. So go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. Now onto the video. Number 1 is communicating a plan and having a plan. You have to have a centralized location where you, your family, or your nearest and dearest friends that you have built this relationship with, who are prepping together, survivorship together, homesteading together. You need to have a plan of where to go if something were to go down. So there's 2 forms of what we're dealing with EMP and nuclear. Is if all of a sudden something hits, is it close to us? Or if something hits way further than us, but we're affected because the grid is down or the EMP actually hit a bigger part of America. So the first decision is, we see where it hit, but we've got to get a centralized location to figure out, do we stay and fortify and bug in, or do we go and bug out to whatever situation that we're going to? You have to have a centralized location to discuss those situations first. Now, this would be important to say, okay, if all our phones go down, children, parents, siblings, if our phones go down, this is where we're meeting right now. Let's make sure, I know you think I'm crazy, but if all of a sudden we lose power, how can we communicate? We don't need to go to the nearest grocery store. We don't need to go to the nearest civic area or where everybody's gonna be gathering because it's gonna be chaos. The main goal is to go to this location. So when we plan that location, we need to know that that's where everybody is going. If all of a sudden we can't get phone calls, all of a sudden we can't get emails, all of a sudden nothing's working. Maybe our vehicles are not even working, we don't know. But the situation is, we've got to get to this location and have a time frame on that location to make the decisions what's next. So communication and making sure you have a meeting point to say, this is what we're gonna do. Communication, communicating the plan, and making the plan happen. That is number 1. We have to make sure that those things are decided way before something happens. All of a sudden you didn't make these decisions. Well, I have 6 kids, I have 4 siblings, I have parents. What if all of a sudden we're trying to get to one place and we can't communicate? Then that means someone will not know the plan, someone will not be here, and all of a sudden we're worried, hey, is that person okay? We won't know. And we can't spend time running around our local town trying to find them. So have the plan, make sure it's a game plan that everybody knows this is the centralized location and this is where we're going. I would challenge you to make sure it's in the place that where your preps are, or in the place that you plan to hunker down, because it makes it easier to not waste the extra fuel to get there and the time to get there to make the decision for the meeting point. Secondly, let's talk about fortifying. If we're bugging in and we're hunkering down, the reason is because the EMP didn't happen right here, so you know you're safe from actual, chemical exposure or respiratory exposure. When we talk about fortifying our property, we have discussed plenty of times our home and how we have fortified our structure. We've put double insulated doors. We've made sure those doors have a locking mechanism that is welded to where it can be closed and no one can access that door unless you know, it would take time and saws and cutting torches, but it can be done, but it would be a long time, and it would take a long time. It allow me to then turn around and focus my attention towards that situation. Same way with our metal screens on our windows. We've had a video on that. So we're fortifying our place. Let's think about our animals. Let's think about our food outside. At this point, if we're not worried about the exposure of any kind of nuclear or chemical situation, then we've got to fortify our animals. We have to fortify our crops. We have to fortify our food sources to get them closer to the house. So I'm going to make sure that I have water close to the house. I'm going to make sure I have food close to the house. I'm going to make sure my animals, for instance, all these pigs and all these cows, I'm going to try to migrate them to the closest barn to my home. So my goal is not to expose myself outside. If I choose to bug in, and the group of my family or friends are bugging in with me, and all of a sudden we know people are not prepared, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the ones that are prepared, or the ones who seem like they have it all together. So when communication's down and we can't buy something at the store because no one has cash, and we can't barter because no one's prepared to barter, and no one has food put up for more than about a day or two, they're going to come looking for those things. Now, one good thing about people like me is we live in a very rural area in Mississippi. But if you're in the big cities or you're in the suburban areas and you start to lock down and you start to say, I'm bugging in, you have to make sure you are understanding what that means. That means you are ready to fortify your place and take care of the preps and the family you have there. Remember, you've gained wisdom. You've prepped for this, not to prep for the rest of the community and for the people that you tried to teach and that they thought you were crazy. When we plan to bug in, that we have fortified what we're dealing with. We have fortified our food. If all of a sudden, if our water is, if we're planning on using water outside, that's a bad decision. You need to make sure that you have that creek or that river or that stream or that way to boil water. Make sure it's not far from your home, or make sure you have a lot of that already stockpiled in your home. Everything is about staying right there close and making sure that you have fortified everything you're needing to fortify, because the more you go out, the more people see you, the more you're exposed, and the more that they're going to want what you have. Be careful. Making sure fortification is key when you talk about bugging in. Security, defense, and taking care of your preps and your family. You've set up for this. Make sure that plan is orchestrated by taking care of fortification and self-defense. Second part of number 2. Say, for instance, you're in a situation where it's close. You may be in a chemical situation where you believe that you could be exposed to some of the chemicals in the air. Well, I challenge you to have respirators, have filters, have ways that you can mitigate that risk. Other options, and I tell you what we plan to do and what we do when it comes to being very close to an exposure. The clothes that we have on, the air that we're breathing, all that stuff is going to be affected. So everything that person had on, if you're in an area that has been exposed or very close to exposure, all those clothes go off and never go into your home. Also, when you get in your home, you're cutting off air conditioners, you're cutting off fans. You want no circulation. You have to try to seal off the home as best as possible. You go through and you start taping off doors, you start hanging plastic, you start making sure that you are sealing every aspect of your home as possible. Now, can you get it airtight? No, you cannot. That's the whole point of bunkers, and that's the whole point of safe rooms. Well, if you don't have that capability of having a $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 investment on your property of a bunker, you have to learn, okay, everything I had on outside is now coming off. When I get in, I have to shower, I have to bathe, I have to clean all my nose, all my ears, all my face. I have to also make sure that I wash my hair. I have to make sure that I put new clothes on. Here's an option. What we do with bug out or bug in, we have miler bags, and our clothes that we want, we have extra pairs of clothes put in a miler bag, sealed up. Why? Because there's no exposure to anything with those clothing, and that will get us through 1 or 2 days, or having a pair of clothing that's not affected to exposure. So if I'm staying home, I have to make sure that I've taped off everything, I have sealed up everything, I've turned off every AC or heat unit possible, I've closed my chimney so there's no air coming into my home, and I'm getting to a center room, and I'm going to tape off as much as I can. Also, having potassium or having iodine. Now, you need to do your research on those things, but those things are very good to help put in our body and to help not take in the exposure of respiration. That's not what this video is about, but you need to look into potassium iodide or iodine and making sure that you're protecting your body as much as possible. So number 2, bug in. You're bugging in to protect your fortress from people coming if an EMP happens, because they're going to want what you have. And number 2B is, if all of a sudden you are in a area like that, it's going to be more chaotic. You're going to have a chance not to get a lot of things, and you got to make sure that you contain the exposure as much as possible. Also taking care of you and your family and your health. If you're that close to a situation, you may want to look at bug out. But again, bugging in, make sure that you are closing up every door, washing your body completely, putting on new clothes that has not been affected by the air or been in any kind of air quality, and start doing all that you can to hunker down. Have things like potassium, have iodine, have respirators, have ways that you can protect your family, because this is when it gets serious. You're locked in your own chambers and fortification, and there's no leaving for a long time, or at least until the exposure's down. Now, number 3, we're not bugging in and we're worried about exposure, so we're gonna bug out. So you need to have bug out bags. I have a video on our bug out bags. It's all about making sure those things are ready. Studies show that if an EMP happens and it's due to nuclear or a chemical situation, if it's in your area, first of all, if you're within a few miles of it, within minutes, you will be exposed to it. So you need to be prepared and ready to where if you say, okay, we're at the meeting place, we've got the plan, within 5 to 10 minutes, we're out of here because we're already loaded in a bug out situation. We've got a bug out bag ready, we've got bug out food ready, we're ready to go. I have containers full of our freeze-dried food. I have containers where I can throw as much food in there as possible to slide right into our trailer or to slide right into our vehicle. It's right there, ready all together in one spot to say, bug out, here we go. Bug out bags stay in the car, so all I'm doing at that point is I'm grabbing the water and the food in the containers and I'm out. I've got that plan. That's part of planning. Bug out is very important because you're going to forget something. So then you have to learn to make do and have versatility in your bug out bag. All those videos I'll link below. But if you plan to bug out, things to think about. Again, close exposure, safety and security such as self-defense. Do you have any way to defend yourself because you're going to be on the roads at that point? Is your car ready? Do you have it gassed up? Do you keep your car gassed up? I've said this in a lot of other videos. When it comes to prepping and taking care of your home, you have to make sure you have extra fuel. You have to make sure that you have topped off your fuel. If we're at a half tank, we're empty. If we're at 3/4 of a tank, it's time to go and fill it up. So we try to stay full all the time in all our vehicles. And then also we have the trailers ready to go. If all of a sudden we had to hook up trailers where Misty's in one, I'm in one, Aiden's in one, where we can get things out of here and bug out all together. It's all part of the original number 1 on planning, but you need to say now we're planning. Number 2, we're either bugging in. Number 3, we're either bugging out. We've got to have that plan in place now and everybody know what they're supposed to do. Part of both 2 and 3 is a few things that you need to check. Check communications. Do you have CBs? Do you have ham radios? Do you have different frequency analog style ways to contact? Do you have a satellite phone? There's studies that show in some areas some phones will work, some computers will work, some cars will work. Other studies show that none of that will work. So we need to have other options to communicate. For instance, we have a bunch of radios or handheld radios where we can utilize across the property, across a few miles, and making sure that we can communicate with one another. That's part of the plan. Also, we have CBs, we have ham radios. Now, that doesn't mean those will work. We don't know. But frequency-wise, we're going to try our hardest to get in touch and communicate. So we need to check those communication devices and make sure they're ready to go. Now, we won't know if everything works or not works, depending on where the EMP hits and also the damage of the EMP. But we do know we need to be able to communicate or to listen to communication. Along with that, do you have batteries filled up? Just like we talked about with the gas. All the things that you're going to be, all your preps and all the things you're using, you have practiced with those things. You have to make sure that you have kind of practiced all this going on. If you have not practiced what you're doing, then you're going to fail at trying to get out quick enough, or you're going to fail at fortifying. So you need to have a little practice going on as we talk about bug in, bug out. Now, let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is alternative energy. You have to have a form of alternative energy. Now, can we live off grid and live without power? Absolutely. But it's going to be a lot harder for you to not have some kind of supplemental power. So I would look at battery banks. I would look at solar generators. I would look at having propane. We just did a video on propane. We've done videos on our 2 solar packages and what we have with the Blue Eddy and with the Pecron. Those are both linked below. Also, we have a propane generator that runs a big portion of our house. Now, when we talk all those things, the battery bank, the solar generator, and also the gas and propane generators, those are supplementing the fact of us being off grid if we lost the grid based on an EMP. If we're bugging in or bugging out, all those things we just talked about are able to be moved with us. Our trailer, we have a trailer and a car that is set up to be able to maneuver those things if we had to. But our goal is not to try to go if we don't have to. We're gonna fortify and we're gonna bug in. So then that will give us ways to be able to utilize those alternative energy sources for anything. If it's simply hot water, if it's simply pumping water out of our well, even if we can't use our hand pump, we can pump it out from the house. It may be running our freezers for a time until we get all that out to be able to cure it and preserve it in some other form and fashion. So you need to have another alternative energy source. Please do not say, and please don't comment that, well, we can't afford it. You better afford it, because if all this discussion with the wars and all the discussion with EMPs and all the discussions with all the escalation going on, where we're saying stuff to China, we're saying stuff to Russia, we see Iran, we see all these countries who are really not fond of America right now. The West is looking not as strong as we should. With that said, alternative energy and having some kind of propane, some kind of gas, some kind of solar, some kind of battery bank, you've got to make it happen. It's got to be a priority in your life to have some kind of alternative energy, just in case. You don't have to have it, but it will make life easier. So let's think through this while we're prioritizing our preps. Let's look at alternative energy. It's huge. If all of a sudden a major EMP hit, to get our grid going back strong, and the majority of our grid would take literally 2 to 5 years to rebuild. And the parts that we need to rebuild, they're so complicated, sprung together with all these different facets. They're not even really made here in America. Most of the stuff is made overseas in China. So if all of a sudden we're having issues and escalation with some of these countries, do you honestly believe they're gonna do all they can to help us? So let's recap for a second. Number 1, communication, building the plan, and making sure the plan is taking place. Number 2, you're bugging in, you're fortifying, and you are set up to make sure your property is safe and that everyone inside is safe. So second part, maybe it's not just about fortifying because people are coming around you. Maybe you're actually in the danger zone. So now we have to take care of our respiration. We have to take care of our sicknesses. We need to tighten up the airflow. We need to tighten up the situation that is happening around us and make sure all ventilation is cut off to inside the home. If they're using Bisqueen with covers on your windows, closing up the doors, using towels, whatever it is, keep the outside out and the inside in. Number 3, bugging out, making sure we have a plan that if we're bugging out, those things are ready, your exposure time is very close, so you've got to get the stuff moving quickly. If it's animals, if it's bug out supplies, if it's having the bags ready, if it's having a trailer ready, if it's having all those things, they need to be ready to go within minutes of getting to the meeting point and getting out of Dodge. Number 4, having the energy source, alternative energy. You have to have that to supplement whatever you're doing. From going on the roads or staying at home, having some kind of supplement energy will help you get through any situation that you're going through. Now, for the last point, number 5, you have to be unseen. You have to be the person that nobody knows about. So they talk about becoming the gray man. You have to be discreet. So when I say we talk about fortifying and bugging in, my goal is to not let anybody know that. I'm not gonna act like all my lights are on and run my generator at night. I'm not gonna have the smoke going because it's cold outside and we got the fire going and I'm ginning it up and I'm acting like I'm living in paradise. You have to be very inconspicuous. You have to make sure that you are not seen. If you have all these animals, you need to get them to a safe place because those animals are not going to be safe. If you have food outside and you have these big gardens, you need to collect what you can and get inside and not worry about the rest. Because if someone comes on that property, you don't need to be outside trying to defend it and then all of a sudden expose yourself for even more. So you have to be inconspicuous. You want to not have confrontation unless you have to have confrontation. So being the gray man is important. I would also challenge you to stay and avoid areas such as supermarkets, urban cities, staying out of the main flow and the thoroughfare of these areas. Stay off the roads as much as possible, especially like interstates or highways. Try to take back roads. The less you have to expose yourself in any situation, is good. Now say, for instance, you've got to find information. You've got to communicate in some form or fashion. You don't wear the brightest thing. You become the gray man. You try to be as inconspicuous as possible. If you can ride a bike there. Don't drive there, because your car is going to be able to be seen and people may want it. They'll know you have fuel. So you have to learn, okay, I want to be the one that nobody sees. If I can get to the place without people noticing me, great. That's like for us when we talk about bugging out. If we had to bug out, our vehicles are not big bright colors. They don't have a lot of junk on them that says this is our bug out vehicle. It's very inconspicuous. The trailers that we have are enclosed and they're locked, so they can't be seen, that people think that we're taking all this wonderful food and all these great things that we can prep with that you can just see and have. So we have planned to be the gray man. We have to be silent, we have to be unseen, and we have to be ready for anything. Don't be bragging about your preps. Don't try to be confrontational. Don't try to be the boss and show everybody what to do. That's not your job. Your job is to take care of your family and the people that has entrusted yourself to survive with. So be the gray man, be inconspicuous, be unseen, get what you need to get. Bug in, bug out, it doesn't matter. You have to be the unseen person, using different modes of transportation, using ways to get out of somewhere without using the main thoroughfare. Because if all of a sudden, say for instance, you got this big vehicle packed full of stuff and you're stopped on the main road and there's chaos in front of you, your vehicle will be a target. So it needs to be fortified, it needs to be tinted out. That's another thing. We tint our vehicles out to a point where no one can see in, because I don't want anyone being able to see what we have. Same with our home. We fortify our home, we fortify our vehicle. So I challenge you, you've got to learn to be the silent party, learn how to light fires without smoke, learn to do things by being inconspicuous and being unseen. So this video is not meant to be the how-tos of dealing with bugging in or bugging out. It's not about if EMP happens, what do you need? We've done videos on things like that. But this is a common sense approach that if something were to happen, in the world we're living in, this could happen at any point in time. What is your next step? What is your goal? And these 5 things, communication, planning, bugging in, fortifying, bugging out, knowing where you're going and having a secure plan to do that. Number 4, alternative energy. And number 5, being as silent and inconspicuous as possible, being the gray man. Those things can help you get to where you're going, or fortifying what you have, or taking survival serious to get you through this bad situation of an EMP blast, a chemical warfare, or something even more serious. If this lasts a week, or if this lasts a year, or if this lasts longer, have these 5 things thought through so you can be ready for just about anything that comes your way. Hope this video helped you. I run over these plans all the time in my head because my goal is to make sure we're ready. We're gonna practice what we preach, and we're gonna try to make sure everybody knows what we're doing. All of a sudden something goes down. So be ready, be prepared, and know when it all happens, if it all happens, that you're ready. If it doesn't happen, that's even better. This is just like an insurance that you hope you'll never use. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think about this video below. God bless. Happy homestead, y'all.